Did you guys see the Video Music Awards with Lady Gaga dressing like a man? Monsters, were you shocked? Were you appalled? Men, were your penises confused? Women, were you slightly aroused? I was confused. I was... what the fuck? This video is not all about the Video Music Awards. It's actually a progression of a lot of things. Of course, as you guys remember, I reviewed Lady Gaga's CD Born This Way back in May, and I want to make a little continuation video on that based around my feelings toward this particular artist, as well as a couple of others. So this is going to be a video that's going to be really tagged for one, but it's going to be an umbrella video for a couple. And that's because Lady Gaga, I'm sorry to say, ladies and gentlemen, actually I'm not sorry to say, what the fuck am I talking about? I'm not sorry for anything that I say. Lady Gaga is becoming old news, and she's becoming old news in a hurry. Lady Gaga's Born This Way may have sold 1.5 or 1.6 million copies its first week of release. However, you have to understand, as I said in the review video, there will be a link somewhere so you can view that. A lot of those were digital sales, a lot of those were online sales, they were not physical sales. So, in my opinion, even though people have acquired the album, it doesn't really count because she's not helping the music business whatsoever. In fact, it's kind of sucky. In fact, it's just ridiculous. She's not helping the industry from the highest level all the way down to the lowest level, because you have to imagine all the people that went into helping make that album and creating it, and they're now making a more minute cut of the profits. Either that or they were already prepaid, and this is just pocket change to her. And I'm more inclined to go with B, mainly because if you think about it, all the merchandise sales, all the concert tickets, and all the overpriced blah 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 that she was able to sell or make or has with her likeness, kind of like Justin Bieber, this is probably something that she can easily do. It's not something that a struggling, starving artist in, say, the metal department or the independent scene or a underground rapper has to really undertake and go through in order to get his music heard by the public. He's not going to have the mass backing of a lot of corporate funding, not to mention a lot of coverage in magazines, the internet, and whatever. So in my opinion, Lady Gaga doesn't need to be ridiculous in order to get all, the money that she's getting. But she opts to do so because she's quote-unquote born this way. Dressing in drag is not all that shocking, folks. In fact, dressing in drag is, well, kind of common. A lot of people have done it. And her doing that is no surprise. If your penis was a little bit confused, then there's something wrong with you. By looking at this artist the very first time, I immediately thought to myself, the hell is that? Seriously, what are you? And I thought the emo kids were bad. I thought that these emo boys with these girls' haircuts and these t-shirts and they're a little bit overweight so it looks like they have tits, that was messed up. That plays with your mind. But Lady Gaga doing this, and you're just like looking at it and you're thinking to yourself, what exactly am I staring at? But looks aside, the irrelevancy has already happened. And this is where I'm going to direct this video, and that's the fact that Lady Gaga is becoming irrelevant. Step number one, her CD is already off the top 20, and this is something that should not have happened this quickly for an artist of this magnitude. This is something that should have happened maybe next January, next February. She should right now still be within the top 10 or even the top 5 if she was truly the artist that everybody intends and says that she is. Now, a lot of people will cite the fact that this album is poor, myself included, considering I had to listen to the miserable heap of vomit, and that also the cover art, the concept, and everything behind it seemed very bleh. And I know that I use bleh instead of adjectives a lot more lately, but that's simply because it's the best way to really describe it, is bleh. This is what some people would call an off album. Some people say that people have a sophomore slump. She apparently had the junior jitters. And that's understandable. Every artist is going to go through that. However, in pop music especially, whenever you have the sophomore slump, the junior jitters, the senior suckfest, whatever it may be, then you really risk becoming irrelevant, and that's already happening. Now, this is a story, this whole Lady Gaga dressed as a man and drag at the VMAs, this was a story that really made a lot of attention and made waves. However, in my eyes, this is a desperate ploy to try to regain what she had prior to the release of Born This Way. Before everybody kind of listened to this album as a whole and thought to themselves, well, it's not that stunning, it's not that great. And all I have to say is this, Born This Way, really? I understand that whole concept, that whole idea, but Grandma and Grandpa Monster, condoms work. You probably should have used one the night in which this bitch was, procreated. Either that or you should have just never had sex, period, because I can't imagine what you two look like. Monsters, your mama is about to become yesterday's news. In fact, it's already happening. With a poor album such as this one, where a lot of people aren't covering it very well, yes, it may have gotten some high marks, but let's face it, a lot of the mainstream press is influenced by cash. I'm not going to lie. Popular opinion is not necessarily generated by actually listening to the writers that write the articles. It's actually based around money. And that is something that also influences this. If you give this album a poor score in a magazine such as Rolling Stone, then it really tarnishes the reputation of one of the biggest artists in the world. So you have to kind of fudge things a little bit in order to really reflect and influence the sales. It's really good for the business, but at the same time, it's not entirely, well, fair and not entirely truthful. Now, along those other lines, let's face it. This is music that's becoming bland, watered down, and there's already a replacement. There's already somebody out there that's going to be probably headlining the next scene, the next wave. And let's face it, trends in pop culture, and especially pop music today, are moving so quickly that it's almost impossible to keep up. If you remember in the late 1990s, early 2000s, the boy and girl group trend at least lasted about, 3 years or so. In fact, I'm going to go with 4 years because it basically was, unfortunately, the terrible, terrible exploit that really infiltrated my high school years, and just, that's why I turned to metal, really. But nowadays, it's almost like a 6-month to a 1-year thing, where an artist can be really, really hot for about that period of time, and then somebody else comes along and really just steps it up and amps it up. It's really difficult to have a longevity in this business, and you really have to maintain a consistency in order to do that. And with an album like this, it really breaks that wave, it breaks that trend, and online sales aren't exactly helping because it really doesn't show a lot of, power and passion for people to come out, buy the record, and actually own everything. And another thing about the online digital sales, what about the artwork? Isn't her art and the way that she looks, the way that she dresses, the way that she acts supposed to be the focal point here? And they're all going to be getting this stuff online, downloading it? Shut the fuck up, whoever you are. I know you're complaining about this video, but it's just not the same. It's not the same as going out there, getting the physical booklet in your hand, and viewing the art for yourself. Now, I've looked at the art. There's nothing stunning about it. There's nothing about it that really you would want. So in essence, I'm arguing against something that I don't believe in. But in essence, it's also the truth, because having a physical copy is better than a digital copy any day of the week, if you ask me. That's personal opinion. Now, here's the possible future for Lady Gaga. The possible future is that she continues onward, she makes another album, and if she does it very, very quickly, there's a possibility that she could regain some people, or she may just go further down the spiral. I'm going to vote, actually, for B. Why? Because the way in which the music has kind of directed itself towards really points towards this just becoming another artist swept up in all the masses that is dubstep style or dance hall, pop, whatever the hell you want to call it. And it's just not, it's becoming so oversaturated that she's going to become just another voice in the crowd. Or she could do the smart thing. She could wait a couple of years. She could release an album after maybe 3 or 4 years and potentially try to get a Britney Spears style rub, a sympathy rub, as I like to call it. Whenever that album is released, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I remember her. I wonder what happened to her. I wonder what that sounds like. And then they have a big single on the radio, and bam, everything is restored, much like what Britney Spears was able to do with the Femme Fatale CD. Now, the downside to that is that you could also have the holy shit, nobody gives a fuck about you anymore rub. And I'm actually going to label Beyonce with that. Beyonce's 4 is one of the most terrible records that I've probably heard this year that hasn't been under the metal or the rock umbrella. Now, yeah, I'm the type of person that'll listen to just about anything, and I'm exposed to various things whenever I'm at the store. But this piece of shit was just awful. There was no good songs on this record at all. Nothing that would make me even remotely think about wanting to buy it, even if I was a pop fan. Everything about this just feels so typical. It feels so watered down. It feels so basic. And Justin Bieber, he's almost out the door too. They've branded replacements for this guy. Grayson Chance, Cody Simpson, Willow, the other guys, Mindless Behavior, I think it is. Something like that. They've already branded people to try to take his place. And with somebody like Rebecca Black getting all the mainstream attention that she did over one song, well, let's just say it's a really competitive business in pop music. And people, well, people are like sheep. They'll just go on to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. Your pop stars that you're growing up in a span of 6 months to 2 years on, they're becoming nothing. They're becoming zero, zilch. You want to know who the next Lady Gaga is? It's not going to be somebody who's going to be more obscene, more rude, more different. It's going to actually be something that's a little bit more conventional. Why? Because let's take a look at numbers here. Lady Gaga, 1.6 million copies sold, perhaps on the upscale to about 3 million total. Adele, with mainly physical copies being sold, close to 9 million. There's definitely an imbalance there, and it's not in the monster's direction. So, ladies and gentlemen, Lady Gaga might have been a man, but Lady Gaga is also out the fucking door. And all I can say is, on behalf of non-monsters everywhere, thank Christ.